It is Wednesday, May 25th, 2022, and it is 19 hours 21 in Guyana and right across the Eastern Caribbean. Namaste, good evening to you. Welcome to the Wednesday edition of the Lall Show, where we tell it as it is. On this Independence Eve night, I hand you over to the man of the moment, who will bring us tonight's presentation, and I urge you to pay keen attention. And we encourage you to call your friends and your family to let them know that they can join us on frequencies 99.1 and 99.5 FM, and of course via our social media pages. With that said, sir, namaste to you, and the floor is yours.
Namaste to you and Josh.
Namaste.
And Raj and all the people right across this country, in and around the world. Joshua?
Yes, sir.
Do you know in a few hours we will be celebrating 56 years of our independence as a nation?
Yes.
You remember that?
Yes, I do.
Uncle and Auntie, I don't mean to spoil your joy with tonight's program, but come May 31st, our leaders have the golden opportunity, and I say May 31st, 2022, to change every citizen's life for the better. You know, Josh, some people have expressed from time to time their gratitude for what we do here. I want to let all of you know that I am extremely proud of myself and the staff at these two media outfits, the Kaieteur News and the Kaieteur Radio. Since the announcement of this massive oil find in this country and the release of that contract by President Granger and Dr. Jan Mangal, there is hardly a day that goes by without us reporting on this oil sector. Auntie, every single danger we have written on or talked about in this oil sector is coming to pass, man, faster than I can expect. I will play in 2 minutes an online discussion between international experts in economics, the environment, and more so the oil sector. Uncle, you guys will hear them talk about where Guyana is heading, what is there for us, and what can and should be done with this oil bonanza Guyana has. But before I play this tape, let me give you a quick preview of what you're about to hear and remind all of you that this government, maintaining that a bad contract was signed by the coalition government and they would not have signed such a terrible deal, they also promised to review and renegotiate that contract. Since Unaha, they have been pussyfooting, talking about sanctity of contract that prevents them from renegotiating the contract. Everybody knows that. Well, Uncle, this country has the most glorious opportunity to begin the process of getting a better deal for the Guyanese people that can begin as soon as next week. You don't hear what I said there? We have a golden opportunity to begin the process starting next week without even touching that lopsided one-sided contract. You hear that, Josh? ExxonMobil had 5 years enjoying that lopsided deal, giving us worse than crumbs. Now, we are in a position, and I want you to hear me clearly, Uncle. Now we are in a position to make all the changes we want to really make this contract a fair deal. President Ali, the opposition leader Norton, and all the 65 member of parliament has the opportunities staring us in our face to bring about that change. Uncle, after you listen to this tape and you don't demand as a citizen of this country for them to do the right thing to safeguard this country and our future, then I am done with this program. Because I have been carrying, I've been fetching this load. I have been carrying this fight alone for far too long, and I am getting tired. You will hear, Uncle, the international experts, not Lall saying anything. The international experts you will hear speaking, that the Liza 1 permit expiring next week Tuesday and has to be renewed before ExxonMobil can continue pumping oil. Yes, this is where the international experts saying we need to use this as the bargaining chip to wring ExxonMobil neck to get our fair share. Am I clear there, Joshua?
Yes.
The people not saying renegotiate the contract, Uncle. The people is telling us clearly that now is the time to squeeze every part of ExxonMobil to get what they rob us in the contract.
Yep.
We get a couple $100 million and them walk away with a couple billion US dollars. That story was carried today in the Kaieteur news. And on top of that, the international experts, yes, says every single man, woman and child owes ExxonMobil 9 million Guyana dollar each at present. Let me repeat that, man. Let me repeat it. We receive a couple $100 million. Exxon walk away with a couple billion US. And each Guyanese, that little child you hold in your hand, Uncle, every one of us owe ExxonMobil $9 million at present for the money they say them spend out there already. Am I clear? Thank you. President Ali, Opposition Leader Norton, are you guys going to put a hole on this permit and correct this madness? Or y'all going to approve the permit come Tuesday? That's going to allow Exxon to sink this country and every one of us into further debts. What you think, Josh? This fight, Uncle, is for the politicians. It's not for me and you. Let us don't allow them to sell out this country further. 9 million every citizen owe ExxonMobil. And that is only money that them said them spend through loans. Yes, that we don't even know the interest rate until now on the money we borrow. Uncle and Auntie, you will hear the experts warning Guyana not to approve any other project unless they start fixing and collecting from this first project, Liza 1. The man says every other discovery with projects is sinking Guyana into the bottomless pit of debts, while enriching and fattening the oil companies and their shareholders. Joshua,
Yes,
could you play that tape?
Yes.
Uncle and Auntie, I want you guys to listen to these experts keenly and carefully. Play that tape for me, please.
The decision specifically is whether to renew an environmental permit for Exxon's offshore oil operation. It's called Liza 1. And the permit expires next week. So the head of the agency has a really big decision to make, and he needs to announce it by May 31st. But there's growing evidence, and more coming, as you'll hear today, that the deal struck between Guyana and Exxon is just a really bad deal for the Guyanese people, both environmentally and financially. And that's what we're going to explore, and that you'll be able to ask questions on. And we have some of the most qualified experts to be able to answer your questions today. So to introduce them to you, first, really delighted to introduce Melinda Janke. Melinda's an international lawyer, a former oil lawyer, and she actually won the case that cut Exxon's current permit down, so it expires next week and not in 2040. She's leading on 3 other court cases challenging ExxonMobil's deepwater drilling offshore Guyana, and one of those includes the biggest climate change case in the world right now. So we're really delighted to have you here, Melinda. Equally delighted to introduce Tom Sanzillo. Tom's an energy, finance and policy expert that some of you may know. He's Director of Financial Analysis at the International Institute for Energy Economics and Financial Analysis. So he's written extensively about oil and gas development in the country and its impact on the national economy. He's also former First Deputy Controller for the State of New York, where he oversaw government contracts, bond programs, and a $156 billion pension fund. Melinda, I'd like to start with you, please, with some introductory remarks. And then, Tom, we'd love to hear from you.
Very good. Good day, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you so much for having me on this session. I'd like to start by pointing out that the permit, which expires on the 31st of May, which is next week, does not protect Guyana. The protection, the so-called protection that is in this permit is very weak, and we are already seeing that there is destruction of Guyana's natural resource base as a result. So fisheries have been disappearing, fishing catches have disappeared, fishermen's livelihoods have gone. Esso is flaring billions of tons of greenhouse gas, and that of course has an impact on the climate. It also has an impact on the migration of birds from north to south. Guyana is on the flight path for migrant birds. There's a grave risk of a well blowout. The permit simply says that Esso should use a blowout preventer. Obviously they have to use one, but the provisions are very weak, and Guyana has no capacity whatsoever to deal with a well blowout. The permit, combined with the environmental impact assessment, allows Esso to dump 4,000 barrels of sewage into the ocean every day. If you add that up over the life of the project, that's roughly it's roughly a gallon of sewage for every barrel of oil that comes out of Liza 1. A gallon of sewage for every barrel of oil, and that, to my mind, just about sums up the deal that Exxon has with Guyana. And lastly, there is the risk of the well blowout or the oil spill, which could send oil into the Caribbean, devastating the Caribbean Sea as far as Jamaica, leaving Guyana with massive liability if this happens. So all round, already existing destruction, and with the risk of grave danger to Guyana, grave danger to the Caribbean, and of course increasing the danger to the planet because of greenhouse gas emissions from the oil. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Melinda. Tom, over to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all, and good morning, and good afternoon, and good evening, I think, some of you. As Melinda said, the government of Guyana's upcoming decision poses critical issues for the environment in Guyana and for its country's contribution on climate change. I'm here to address the financial and fiscal aspects of the deal. From my vantage, the approval of the permit with no additional restrictions on environmental and climate-related matters and no financial reforms will mean it's just another rubber stamp of oil industry demands on the country. It's just one more addition to a long list of contract abuses that are shortchanging Guyana. We're issuing our third and fourth substantive report today and summarizing them in a fifth report on the country's oil program. This year, Guyana used its oil revenues in its national budget for the first time. And I'm going to discuss these in U.S. dollars, but our report has this in both U.S. and Guyanese currency. At bottom, the new revenues touted by the government and by corporate officials cannot erase the fact that the costs of production are high and mounting. As we see it, each Guyanese resident is on the hook for about $34 billion or $44,000 per person. That is the amount we know is already owed, and there will be a lot more in the coming years if the production plans go forward as they seem to be. What each resident must pay is bad enough, and what we see in this year's Guyana budget adds insult to injury. The government touts all of the revenue, but the revenue did not help Guyana achieve any of the four main goals it established with the International Monetary Fund. In 2019, the IMF and Guyana agreed to a series of goals that would be the way in which the money would be used. It was supposed to do four things: close the deficit, allow for some new spending to meet new budget needs, reduce the debt, and contribute to a sovereign wealth fund for the future. Our review of this year's budget shows that the amount of revenue from oil contributed to the budget was $606 million, and the non-oil deficit was $1.1 billion, so the revenues did not close the deficit. Second, new spending occurred, and the budget increased 37%, and Guyana had to borrow $420 million to do that. That spending is not sustainable. Three, the new revenues did not reduce the debt. Debt increased. Four, there were no contributions made to the Sovereign Wealth Fund. So far, Guyana has received some $600 million, and the oil companies have walked away with an estimated $3.6 billion tax-free. That is for every $1 Guyana gets, the oil companies get around 6. Also, it's not only how much revenue comes in, but how much the country is spending. And this year, new spending exceeded the amount of new oil revenue. Guyana is spending more than it is taking in. The budget is the first year, and so some might say the new fiscal rules should not apply. The first year is a critical time to set precedents, and all of the precedents in this instance are bad. No deficit closing, excessive spending, increased debt, no contributions for the long term. It's a bad deal now, made worse by bad management. And that adds up to each resident owing $44,000 to the oil companies. Given the size of the current amount owed and the amount we see in new oil discoveries, we conclude that Guyana may never see a fair share of the profits. The government of Guyana and Exxon must also open up their books so the public can better understand what is going on. If Guyana simply approves the environmental permit without real changes to this deal, it will have failed to protect the people of Guyana.
Thank you so much, Tom and Melinda. I just wanted to introduce myself quickly. My name is Martyna Dominiak. I'm a senior campaigner at Avaz, leading Avaz's campaign to stop Exxon's drilling in Guyana. And as Melinda and Tom already said, this is a really bad deal for Guyana, environmentally and financially. Simply put, people of Guyana may not see this money back. But this is also a really, really bad deal for the world, for the planet, because of the impact on the emissions and on the pollution. So it's really, really important for Mr. Kamraj Parsram, the head of the Environmental Protection Agency in Guyana, to make the right decision this week. And as we are meeting now, we have actually thousands of people from around the world sending in messages to Mr. Persram right now not to issue the new environmental permit to Exxon, and we hope this happens. Thank you.
Thanks, Martina. Thanks all. All right, we're going to move to the bulk of the discussion, which is where you get to ask questions. A reminder just to raise your hand if you want to, so we can keep track of stuff. And it would be helpful if you could just say who you are, which outlet you're from, and if you're directing your question to Tom, Melinda, or to both. So the floor is open. If anyone would like to ask our experts any questions, then now is the time. Yes, Antonia, we have a question from you. Mario, if you could unmute.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Well, good morning to everyone. Thanks for holding this press conference. 3 questions. So first for Tom, you had mentioned that Guyana has been borrowing heavily. Where are they borrowing from? Who's lending them the money? Melinda, what do you think is going to happen with the review of the permit? And then for Martina, I'm wondering where you're based and what sort of domestic support for Avaz's campaign you see, and just a little bit more about Avaz's campaign would be great. That's it. Thank you.
I can quickly answer the borrowing. There's a borrowing program that Guyana has. It's a combination of international lending from about a dozen countries, and then some IMF lending, and then some bank lending. So every year they're going into the markets. I'm not precisely certain where this particular issuance is going to be financed from, but those are the 3 general sources of revenue, and we can supply you with a pretty detailed list of who the lenders are in general, and I'm not sure who's doing this one this year.
The second question, please.
Okay, so the second question was, what do I think will happen with the review of the permit? And obviously I don't exactly know what the EPA is proposing to do, but I can tell you what should happen. It's 5 years since the permit was issued, and in those 5 years there have been massive changes. We've had the reports coming out of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change warning that we have to end oil and gas. We've had the International Energy Agency, which is really a spokesperson for the oil sector, for the oil industry, saying no new oil and gas because of the danger to the planet. So we have the scientists saying one thing, we have the International Energy Agency saying almost exactly the same thing, and we've seen the United Nations Secretary General saying that any government that is now starting to do oil and gas, that this is madness and morally irresponsible. So very strong, very, very big changes in the last 5 years. And in that case, what should happen is that there should be a new environmental impact assessment of the Liza 1 operations going forward. Whether that will happen, I don't know, but I'd like you to bear in mind that Guyana has very strong laws on environmental impact assessments. Those laws are not being implemented or enforced. And just to highlight what I'm saying, the first permit, the environmental impact assessment, is dated the 1st of June 2017, and the permit for Liza 1 was issued on the 1st of June 2017 for an EIA that is about 1,500 pages. So let me leave it there. I can tell you what should happen, I can tell you what has happened in the past, and I'll leave you to draw your own conclusions.
Martina, can you talk a bit about the campaign, please?
Yes, thanks so much for the question. So we basically launched an Avaz campaign 48 hours ago, asking our members globally to send messages to Mr. Persram, and we will deliver them directly to his office today. And in these last 48 hours, we had over 4,600 people from around the world, from Uganda to Qatar, but also we saw people born and raised in Guyana writing directly to Mr. Persram. This is a global campaign, and we decided as of us to launch it because it is very difficult for people in Guyana to stand against Exxon alone. People are afraid of that, and that's why we want to support them with the power of our global movement, and we have a mandate of our 70 million strong community to launch a campaign against Exxon's drilling in Guyana. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you to everyone, and sorry I didn't say in the beginning, I'm Antonia Uhas. I most recently wrote on Guyana for The Guardian.
Thank you, Antonia. Thanks for your questions. Would anyone else like to ask a question to our experts?
No, Belinda, please don't message me. I could only get the story.
Yeah, I may take... Amanda. Yes.
Hi, this is Amanda from CNBC. Can you hear me?
We can, yes. Hi, Amanda.
Great. This question is for Melinda. Melinda, I know you have one of your lawsuits ongoing is already against the Liza 1 permit and the provisions within it for flaring. Can you give us the latest on that lawsuit and how it would be impacted by the upcoming decision on the permit?
Yes, thank you for that question. There are actually two, so the case is challenging the flaring that Exxon is doing. Exxon has been flaring billions of cubic feet of gas, and we have gone to court and challenged that. The grounds are that the change in the permit to allow the flaring, we say that that is unlawful because Exxon has no right to flare unless the permit says that Exxon can flare. But they changed the permit to allow Exxon to do this flaring. Exxon say they are allowed to flare unless the permit says they're not allowed to flare. So that's it in a nutshell. The argument is that they are not allowed to do this because the permit does not allow them, does not say that they can do it. We've had the last hearing before the judge, and we expect a decision sometime, the judge has said, in July or August. That in itself doesn't stop the renewal of the permit. And we had hoped to have a decision somewhat earlier, but we'll have to wait on the court to give us a decision as and when the court is able to do that. I should point out that the Time Limit for Judicial Decisions Act puts a time limit of 120 days on the court, so the judge should give us a decision within 120 days. And the Caribbean Court of Justice has said that 3 months, really, a judgment shouldn't take longer than that and should be given as soon as possible. So we have to be optimistic that we will get a decision fairly soon.
Amanda, did you have any follow-up questions to what Linda's just said?
Oh, that's great. Thank you. And thank you for hosting the session.
Any other questions, or I may take host privilege and ask one of my own. Okay, so I will. I wanted to explore how the president of Guyana is claiming there's going to be billions for the country as a result of this deal. But actually, Tom, what you're saying is it's actually going to cost the Guyanese people so much money. So how is that squared?
The contract is set up to be basically front-loaded. All of the costs that are incurred, 100% of the costs are paid by Guyana, and they're put into a formula essentially. And at the end of each month, if the revenues don't cover expenses, you roll over the balance to the next month. Well, in this case, there are billions of dollars in capital that are being put in. And so it's going to take a very long time for Guyana to pay that off. and they don't receive a fair share or a 50-50 split until they pay off all of the development costs, they're called. And we see the development costs now at a little over 34 billion. And we expect that as they announce each new discovery, and they've announced 15 new discoveries, that there will be a very long time before Guyana is able to pay off everything and to then, enjoy the benefit. In the meantime, they get a small amount of money every year, a much lower level of profit. The split that I showed on the screen of 85.5% to 14.5% is how it will be for the foreseeable future. And we're not sure if I'm not sure if Guyana will ever see the more robust profits.
Oh boy.
A reminder that if you do want to ask a question, remember to raise your hand, and then we can
What happened? What you do that?
otherwise, you might be frantically trying to unmute yourself, not getting very far. So, any further questions? Yes, Antonia.
Hey, Tom, I have one more follow-up on what you just said. Are there any interim what is Exxon spending money on now, and basically who's getting that money domestically? Are they spending money on building things domestically? Are they legally making payments to support their operations? Basically, who's getting money in the short term from their operations?
In the local economy, I'm not sure how it's broken out, but the lion's share of the procurement is, for the construction of the plant, of the platform and the drilling equipment, and that's an international markets that they're getting that from. I am seeing in the newspapers some employment and some local economic benefit, but I'm not sure what they are. And one of the things that we have talked about often is there's no real public reporting on this, and of almost any kind. And while you will get your story here or a story there, the kind of information that should be available to answer your question pretty quickly is just not available.
Thank you.
I see a question from Gary Eleazar with Kaieteur News. I don't know if Andrew, if you want to read it out, and then I can answer, and then Tom can add.
Of course, yes. Thanks, Gary, for your question. My question is, why should Guyana completely halt its oil operations and not renegotiate for a better deal, since the country is a developing one in need of the resources that will be extracted in the near and medium future by developed countries anyways?
So, Gary, thank you very much. I think that's a question that really goes to the heart of the issue. And the reasons why Guyana should halt oil immediately are that the government ought to act in the best interests of the people of Guyana. And this deal is a really bad deal for Guyana, and it puts Guyana at risk. You've mentioned renegotiation. Usually, petroleum agreements of this kind would have a renegotiation clause in them. This one does not. It specifically says that there will be no renegotiation unless Exxon, Hess, and the Chinese National Offshore Oil Company and the government agree. Now, the purpose of an oil company is to make money. It's not to act in the best interests of Guyana. It's the government's job to act in the best interests of Guyana. So if there is any renegotiation, it will only be because Esso, Hess, and CNOOC want a better deal for themselves and for their shareholders. It will not be because Guyana can negotiate a better deal for Guyana. The government has so far shown that it is incapable of standing up to Esso, to Exxon. And so I think one would have to ask the question, do you trust this government to negotiate with ExxonMobil. When you look at the government's record, changing the environmental permit, granting the Kaieteur permit against the wishes of people in the country, rushing through with Yellowtail, rushing to do a gas-to-shore project when the World Bank says that there is little or no domestic market for gas in Guyana. When you look at all of these factors where the government does have a choice, and they have been so pro-oil, do you really think that Guyana can renegotiate any sort of improvement to the situation at the moment? So we have this situation where renegotiation is a risk to the Guyanese people, not a benefit. And then on top of that, we have the oil curse. Can you show me a developing country that has benefited from its oil? Yes, of course, the GDP goes up, but the people end up poorer. You get a tiny elite that is much richer, usually politicians and the people who hang around them, and you end up with the oil curse, where revenue comes in and the government no longer feels that it has to be responsive to taxpayers because it has a different revenue base. You have volatility in the oil price, so the revenue goes up and down. And you have secrecy. We have no idea what is going on. The audit of the pre-contract costs has not happened, has not been published. We don't know what the costings are in the contract. We don't know what is going on 120 miles offshore. And when you have secrecy of that kind, it's very dangerous for people in country, and it has a very bad impact on the society. And because I'm a lawyer, I have to say this, it undermines the rule of law. So these are the reasons why Guyana should stop doing oil. And I would flip the question back and say, why should Guyana do oil at a time when the world is moving away from oil to renewable energy? Why take that risk when the country has a bright future as a carbon sink and can go 100% renewable energy very, very quickly?
I think Melinda touched on all the major points in looking at it from the interest of the country and people in the country. Another factor to consider is the market consideration, and this is very much part of the analysis that we are looking at, and for why we are voicing such strong concern. As I said, it will take a very long time to pay off the amount owed, and that's kept hidden and secret. But the markets don't look like they will be that strong for very long. Before the Ukraine crisis, the oil and gas industry was on a 10-year decline. And the only thing that has raised oil prices and oil company profits is a war of ghastly war. And when the war is over, we're going to return to a market, that is at best volatile and not very profitable. And the only way right now Exxon is making a profit is by having a one-sided contract that really probably wouldn't stand up against market forces. And so you have a real issue here that the long-term Guyana may never see these robust profits. And so everyone keeps saying, oh, it's going to have more money, it's going to have more money. I don't think so. And the amount coming in now, as I said, it's not enough to meet their objectives. So there could be a different economic formula is what's necessary here. And I would point out in our studies, we use one example, which is the government of Norway. And the reason we use that is Norway is an example of a country that since the 1970s received revenue, ran a very public process where they were able to create a sovereign wealth fund. and it now is 25% of the economy in Norway. Norway has also issued a clear message to its people and to the markets that the revenues that came in the past from oil and gas can no longer be relied upon because the markets have changed. That's the government of Norway whose economy is 25% based on oil, making an acknowledgement that they need to shift gears away from oil and gas and towards a more diverse economic base because the markets have changed substantially, and they do not see a turnaround in the markets anytime into the future.
We have a follow-up question from Gary. What are some of the realistic options available for us, taking into account that judicial recourse is notoriously slothful?
Gary, thank you. Again, that's a very good question. There is very little that one can do to speed up the courts, and of course one has to just go with the timetable of the judges. We do need more judges in Guyana, and we do need, I think, some judicial training for judges on judicial review and constitutional and administrative matters, because these are still things that are fairly new to the judiciary in Guyana. Outside of the existing cases, I think it's really important that people bring more court cases and challenge wherever there are grounds for illegality, to challenge the actions, because that does actually have an impact in sending a clear message that we will not tolerate unlawful actions, and therefore institutions in the country as well as the private sector will want to avoid being sued or want to avoid ending up in court. So it's really important that people show that they are prepared to go to court to enforce the law. In addition to that, political pressure. So if people are not happy with what is going on, they have to say so. They have to lobby the government. They have to be public in their actions and in their speech. Beyond that, there's very little that people can do, because every election it's either won by one party or the other party. We have basically a two-party system with a third party that's made up of the people from the other two parties. And until there is constitutional reform, Guyana appears basically to be stuck with this very toxic political system.
Thank you. I see we have a few more attendees. Welcome. If you would like to ask a question to one of our experts, please raise your hand. There's a button at the bottom, and then we can unmute you. And if you'd like to just say who you are and where you're from, or alternatively, just please put the question in the chat, and I will gladly ask it for you.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, Amanda Winograd again from CNBC. Just to follow up, if renegotiation is not on the table, what realistically is the expectation of what would happen if the EPA decided not to renew this permit? I mean, there's thousands of people working on that vessel, and it's a very expensive operation out there. So what is the expectation for what would happen?
Thank you. Thanks very much, Amanda. There aren't actually thousands of people working out there. We're told that the FPSO, the floating production storage offloading vessel, will have between 300 and 600 people, and of course there are the tankers and so on that are coming to collect the oil. But that's a commercial problem. My concern is the people of Guyana. My concern is not the people that are employed by Exxon, and this is a commercial risk for any oil company. If your permit is not renewed, that is something that you take into account when you do your business plan. So any sensible business will look at the risks and will say, okay, we need to prepare for this. But I want to make it absolutely clear that what I'm talking about here is protecting Guyana and the people of Guyana from an abusive and exploitative situation. So if the permit is not renewed, of course, ESSO has a problem. but the renewal of the non-renewal of the permit, as long as it is based on what is allowed under Guyana's laws, then the EPA has every right to refuse to renew that permit. Because if you cannot show that this is based on the Environmental Protection Act, you cannot show that it meets the requirements in the Act, then it should not be renewed. There should be no continuation of that project. It's got to be governed by the legal system in Guyana.
I think what you're looking at in terms of Exxon, I was just trying to figure out what would happen. There would be a practical matter. There would be judicial delay, and also you don't know what would occur. There might be a halt in the operations for a while until things were settled as to what would happen. And ultimately, there could be a write-down. Exxon just wrote down $4 billion out of Russia. A few years ago, they wrote off far more than that up in Canadian oil sands. They've written off billions in the Permian from misguided investments. They've written off billions at XTO, another gas deal in the United States over the last 10 years or so. So they've made a number of commercial missteps that they've had to write off, and they go on. This is a particularly important project for Exxon, but they would nevertheless, I think, survive as a company if that's, if that's the concern. I think that's how I would look at it from a shareholder kind of Exxon point of view. And on the other hand, they are expecting revenues from it and are very dependent on it. So there would be some concern, I'm sure, at the board level as to what happened and why. But the deal itself should have raised some red flags to the company because it is extraordinary in its one-sidedness. Everybody wants to say, well, we got a great deal in Guyana. Well, sometimes those great deals don't work out the way they were planned on, and so it happens. As for the country, I think there's a major reorientation of what would have to go on, but there is a diverse economy there, as Melinda spoke about. And oil is not the only way that Guyana has made money in the past. If it was going to make a lot of money, maybe there would be a case. But I'm not buying that this is going to be some great bonanza for the country. Marginal money for a good deal of time is what they will get. And unfortunately, in the first year of their use of the money, they overspent, so that the management of the country is really questionable. When in the first year they mismanaged it. You can't overspend and go deeper in debt and tell everyone that you're benefiting from oil, when in fact that's not what's happening. What's happening is a fiscal train wreck.
If I can just say something more to all that Tom and Melinda beautifully explained, I think having in mind everything that we've learned about the oil contract, everything that we've learned on the fact on how the money was spent so far, and knowing the trends of the fossil fuel market, I think the conclusion we can draw is that Exxon actually needs Guyana more than Guyana needs Exxon.
Thank you. We have a question from the Wall Street Journal. Apologies for my pronunciation, Kaieteur. I hope that's pronounced correctly. Thank you for the opportunity. Apologies. No, we haven't already addressed this point. So there have been reports of a number of upcoming infrastructure projects, such as new roads and the Amaila Hydro Dam, are those projects being financed by oil income?
I'm not certain on that. The budget this year increased spending by about 37%. Most of it is going to capital projects. The list of capital projects that I saw was more than the amount, so I'm not quite sure where the actual money is going to. But I would say that in general, the perception that there would be new revenues is obviously driving some new spending in the country. And in the first year, they spent more than they actually had, so they're a little bit ahead of themselves. So I would say it's probably more the perception of the money than the actual money, from what I can see, because they borrowed a good deal of money this year in order to fund the new spending.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's extremely worrying to see the way that the money is basically being squandered on vanity projects at a time when the people in Guyana need better health care and better education. The money is not going to benefit people in Guyana, but it is, as I said, being squandered on vanity projects. It's very interesting that you mentioned the new roads, because Guyana has one of the worst death rates on the roads, and there's no money being spent to make those roads safer. There's only money being spent to make more roads, which will create greater risks for people. And the Amelia Falls, which you mentioned, the hydro dam, I just want to point out that there is a problem with this, because the river sometimes dries up. And of course, you can't really do hydro if you don't have any water.
We have probably about 6 minutes left before we may need to wrap up. So get your questions in by raising your hand, and there will be opportunities afterwards as well. I'll flag at the end how you can reach out to Avaz or to our panel of experts if you have follow-up questions. We want interviews and discussions, further discussions on the phone. If not, it may be that we've come to the end. Yes, for those that weren't able to attend at the beginning, we have infographics that we can show and that we can share with you. So please feel free to reach out to us if you would like these infographics.
Yes, in addition, Andrew, the reports and studies that we referred to are all available on my organization's website, ieefa.org. And there's 2 new studies released today, and there are additional studies and commentaries that we've written over the last couple of years that put more substance to some of the discussion that we've had today, and documentation.
Wonderful, thank you. Antonio, no, there won't be a recording, but if you want clarification on anything, you have further questions, then please reach out. You can reach out to media@avaz.org, and there's our personal email addresses as well, which Lall's going to put into the chat right now. So do reach out, and we'll be able to handle any queries that you may have. If we've got no further questions, I'll just open the floor actually to Tom and to Melinda for any closing comments. If you've got any closing comments, then now would be the time, and then we can wrap up probably just slightly ahead of the end of the hour.
Yeah, and Andy, thanks very much for that opportunity. And I really would just like to sum up to say that the deal between the government of Guyana and ExxonMobil is one that is bad for the people of Guyana on every level. It's bad financially, and Tom has explained this beautifully. It's economically a disaster in the making because of the changes in the global energy market, and again, Tom has explained this beautifully. Environmentally, it's a disaster for Guyana. We're already seeing our fisheries disappearing. We're already seeing people's livelihoods being affected. So environmentally, it's very bad, as well as for the destruction of the global climate system, rising sea levels. You have a country with a capital city below sea level, and the greenhouse gas is dissolving in the ocean and making it more acid. We are ocean people. We depend on the Atlantic. Legally, there are serious problems with this. I've mentioned I've already brought 4 court cases, but there are other cases that are being brought challenging the oil. And socially, oil brings with it the oil curse, greater inequality, and quite often, political instability, governments not being responsive to people, and so on. So, in sum, oil has been a disaster for Guyana and is on track to continue to be a disaster for Guyana. We only have to look at our neighbor, our sisters and brothers in Venezuela, to see what happens when you have oil. And we are actually giving refuge to people from Venezuela right now, even though Venezuela has the biggest reserves on the planet.
I just, I do things, from a financial perspective, and when we did this analysis, we was not surprised. We were surprised, but that a number of industry commentators felt the same way that we did, and we're not the only ones who are saying that this is a bad deal for Guyana. And as I look forward to it, there are regularly announcements made of new oil discoveries, and it's seen as a very positive thing in the newspapers, and I guess among the people in Guyana who are watching this. And every time I see this, I say, well, it looks to me like that just makes the mountain of debt that much higher that has to be paid off before the Guyanese people get it. So there are 15 new oil discoveries or so that came in since the ones that are now already under development. Our estimation is that that's somewhere around another $75 billion, which, if developed and the markets perform in a way that they are now, which is highly unlikely, but if they did, this is taking you into 2060 or 2070 in terms of the actual long-term payback and development. And so that's what's the basis of our concern, that Guyana may never see the robust revenues that they've been promised.
Thank you. I think that's all we've got time for. I want to thank Tom and Melinda for your time today. I want to thank the attendees, and a reminder that if you do have any further questions, if you would like to be in contact with our experts, if you would like the research that Tom outlined, or the infographics or the feature of ours, then please feel free to reach out to media@avaz.org or storez@ieefa.org as well. If you reach out to one of us, we can put you in contact with the rest. So thank you very much to everyone, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Wow. Joshua,
Yes, sir.
Uncle and Auntie, that's not a mouthful you guys heard. That's a whole year of bellyful you have heard there. I can take what this 52 minutes of tape and make 5,200 programs out of it.
Yep.
What these people have said there, it's the saddest thing I have ever heard. I knew it, but I want you people to hear it from these international experts themselves. The gentleman started off by talking it's a bad deal for the Guyanese. He didn't say Guyanese, the Guyanese people, both financially and economically. And they all spoke of the secrecy of information by our government and also from ExxonMobil. It is so sad where we are today. Uncle, the people said clearly, Guyana is at a crossroad. You either go to hell or you go to heaven. And if they were very specific, Uncle, these people were very specific, calling on the EPA head, Mr. Parshram, telling this man not to renew the permit unless and until changes are made that will benefit Guyana and the Guyanese people. You heard them say it, they were very specific in the language. But let me say this to President Ali and our opposition leader Aubrey Norton. Now is the time for both of you to get your acts together and get what Guyana really deserves from its oil wealth. Both of you are in charge, not Mr. Parshram from the EPA. That young man is just a worker, working with instructions from you people. Uncle, unlike what the international people said, that the EPA head must not renew that Liza 1 permit, I am saying, Lall is saying, that both parties, President Ali and the opposition leader Norton, must ensure that the permit is not renewed before next Wednesday until these poor people, the poor people of this country, can put food on the table. Meaning, get your proper deal before you renew this permit. If you guys love your people, Mr. Ali and Mr. Norton, show them now. Remember, you're going to need votes, and they are listening to this program every day and every night. While they're listening, guess what? They're listening with hungry belly. Now is the opportunity to change that. Tomorrow is Independence Day. Our foreparents fought for us not to be controlled by foreigners who are robbing us of our wealth to build their nations. No. They didn't fight for that. So let me ask you guys, man, are you going to sit down and allow your politicians to give that control back to the foreigners? Is that what our foreparents fought for? To sit down now quietly and allow these foreigners to take control? To rob us more than when we didn't have the independence? I don't think so. Friday at 11 a.m., the workers' union have a protest in front of the Labor Ministry for an increase in minimum wage. You hear that, Josh?
Yeah.
This is what is going on in this country. The fastest growing economy on earth, with billions of US dollars leaving this country, and have its citizens taking home less than $200-300 US a month, holding protests for an increase in their salary, while the foreigners spending $300-400 US a night in drinks on our resources with our wealth. Man, this whole country, Joshua, should shut down.
Indeed.
And all of us should go down to the office of the president and in front of Aubrey Norton office to protest and demand our fair share. I will speak a little more on it Friday. In the meantime, we can take some calls. Josh?
Yes, sir.
But let me end by saying this. this opportunity we have now to bring about money in we pocket, uncle, was made possible by two Guyanese. A gentleman named Troy Thomas and that same lady you heard there just now, Melinda Janke. Joshua?
Yeah.
Both of them went to court to reverse the illegality done by the coalition government when they granted this permit to ExxonMobil, the Liza permit, for 20 years. That was illegal. When the law said the permit can only be valid for 5 years. Guess what, uncle? Justice Joanne Barlow was a judge that promptly reversed that 20 years back to the 5 years, in which now this golden opportunity exists for us to be rich, very rich, and don't have to go protesting for increase of salaries. No. Hadn't that judge ruled and put back this 20 year to 5 year, this golden opportunity would have never exist now today. For us to hold back it and say, no, Exxon, we're not renegotiating the contract, but hey, you got to stop pumping until we start correcting all the wrongs, all the mistakes, so that the people of this country can get money. Yes, uncle, Guyana is at a crossroad. Come May 31st, our politicians can take us to heaven by choosing not to renew Liza 1 permit, unless and until changes are made that will finally benefit the Guyanese people. Or, Joshua, they can renew the permit come 31st May and allow ExxonMobil to send us all to hell instead of heaven. With that, I say good night and God bless you all. The choice is yours, uncle and auntie. You decide. You decide if you want them to march you to the slaughterhouse with your eyes wide open, or you're going to do something about this. God bless you guys, and I'm going to take some phone calls.
All right, you can call us this evening on 226-7453, 226-7454, 624-6456.
Oh, no.
We have a caller here on the line. Caller, good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Glenn. I'm calling from all the way from USA, Maryland.
Thank you.
I look at your program every single day, and what you're saying, I'm so optimistic with what you're doing. I love what you're doing. But I want the Guyanese people to listen to what you're saying. Listen to what you're saying. You speak it from your heart. And the last word you said just now is to shut the country down. And I agree with you. When you shut this country down, they're going to get the act together. But people got to come out. They got to come out because they want to vote. They got to come out.
Hold on the line.
You know?
Hold on the line. The people coming out to go protest the labor ministry for an increase in minimum wage. You know, when I see things like this, I don't want to abuse the union leaders. They are who they are, but this is who they are. You know, unless people begin to understand the bigger picture of what is going on in this land, my friend, trust me, they will forever, year after year, go to the Ministry of Labor, protesting 10, 15, 20 people for increase, for a $2 increase. These people cannot fathom, they cannot understand that if they only march for a better deal, man, we all can live like kings and queens. Every Guyanese that is living in North America can come back here and live 5 times better than what you're living right now in the United States. If we only get a better deal, my friend.
Today, my niece called me from Linden and she
Where is
told
it?
me that a bottle of oil is $1,000. She said, every school, the teachers then you got to go to the printer and print. It's $100, $200. So what the government doing with your school now? What are you doing?
My friend, it's not the government alone. It is all the politicians. Have you noticed how they have all, they have all gone numb, dumb, and deaf since we strike oil in this land? Have you noticed they have gone completely dumb on all these foreigners eating away?
If Guyana is the farthest economy growing and people still suffering, people still can't put food on the table.
Exactly.
Oil so dear, fish three bundle for $1,000. Come on, man.
Exactly, my brother. Exactly.
I don't know. I hope Guyana turn like South Africa countries who win all the oil gas and take more better gas, the island the money, and the business and everything.
Whole.
My gold mines do.
Whole for me, man.
You see what might do? My go away with a lot of wealth for this country. And they come here. And my come again to do the same thing with the Irish people doing now.
My friend, we are not like those African and Asian countries that had oil. We are 1 trillion times worse than them as I speak,
yes,
with this contract. And this is what I have been trying to educate this nation as to where we are. You have heard that seminar those experts had. You listen to them. They have said it. They have said exactly what Glenn Lall have been saying 1.5 years on this radio and almost 7 years through the pages of the Kaieteur News. All right.
Oh my God, mines used to give Guyana 2% royalties.
I just
and then they raised to 8%. What 8% could do nothing. All the money going away to Canada. now ExxonMobil come now, and ExxonMobil doing worse more than what they do. They got all I play with the gas. Oh man.
It's sad, my friend.
Country. Every day I was trying to make country, I tell you. I'm
It's
supposed
sad.
to be home sometime in this area.
It's sad.
I tell you, I don't know.
I know how you feel. But don't give up. Don't give up. The fight continues. You got to get your relatives in Guyana. You got to get your friends, your families here.
You shut the country down for one day, sacrifice yourself there.
Exactly.
Sacrifice yourself.
Exactly.
1963, 64. You see what they do? They shut down the country and everything good now back again with the state government inside there. The state government.
Yeah, but
where they power now.
my friend,
Shut down the country from them.
my friend,
Cherry Dragon was the president, was the premier that time then.
thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so you have a good night. Continue listening your ears though.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. I want to tell you that now we are in a much terrible state than in 1964. Now we have both the government and the opposition silent. So where are we? Where are the citizens of this country? They are headless. That's how bad we are at present. Good evening, sir. You're live on the air.
Mr. Glenn Lall.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir. I just want to say this. You know, we've been going around in all the market square and stuff like that around the country. And we hear people saying Glenn Lall is a madman. He don't know what you talk about. He's stupid. Well, my brother, I have to say this today. If they think Glenn Lall is a madman, they need to listen tonight what we're doing, what transpired. The truth of the matter is, it's not Mr. Glenn Lall is saying this anymore. Mr. Glenn Lall been preaching this several times on the air every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Our people need to listen. Our PPP people that's so loyal to the PPP needs to listen and pay attention and stop thinking about PPP and PNC and think what's right for our people.
I hear you.
Brother Lall, my aunt didn't give her life in 1964 in Lenora for stupidness. She gave her life for a cause, for the good and the right for the people. And I want our people to live happy. And I see that they will, between Miss Melinda Yankee said, that both parties are no good for the country. The people has to be involved right now and pay attention to what's going on. In the next few days, if our vice president authorizes signature, because we know who is really in charge in our country right now, if he authorizes anyone to sign off on that deal, then somehow or the other, he must be responsible for the ignorance and the tolerance of what he's doing wrong to our people. And he must pay a price in the future, somehow, in the courts or some way. He has to be paid for wrongness what he's doing to the people.
You know, can you hold a second, please?
Yes, brother.
You know, I keep hearing people, when they call me on the phone or they message me, they keep talking about the PPP. Okay, blaming the PPP. What is happening now, my fellow brothers and sisters, this thing is not a PPP thing alone. The coalition government is part and parcel of what is happening here. This is not about Jagdeo and Ali alone. Aubrey Norton now is the opposition leader. Okay? David Granger is silent. Harman had promised an oil team to put together the oil team to talk to this nation as soon as they came out of office. They have all gone numb and dumb and deaf. So this thing is not a one-party affair that is going on, my friend. All right? So if Jagdeo or Ali authorized the young man at EPA to sign, renew the permit, is the coalition, all of them are directly involved. Okay?
Totally agree.
They have been silent. Why have they been silent? That's the big question. Why are the leaders silent in this land? Today we carry two stories. A matter of fact, some people call me and say it's the best front page they have seen in many years, in which we talked about, those people talk about every man, woman and child in this country owes Exxon Mobil $9 million present. And they said, we can change all this. All this can be changed if we stop approving these projects and renew the Liza 1 permit that is coming.
There we go.
But instead, they're running to give another 5th project. The 3rd project we get nothing from. The 4th project we get nothing from. The 5th project we will get nothing from. So basically these guys are selling us to the wolves in this country, man. Every single Guyanese, even to the dogs, they're selling to the wolves. And every politician, listen to me carefully, please. Every politician is silent in this land.
I agree with you, brother. But right now, it's in the hands of our leading party that's controlling the government. They have the pen and the power of the pen in their hand. And even if the other side is silent, which we don't care, it's who have the pen in their hand. And if they refuse to sign that deal right now,
I am saying
it's done. They have to agree to what we want.
My
Give
friend,
people what belongs to them.
My friend, and to all Guyanese, I am saying this loud and clear. This can stop tomorrow morning if we shut this place down. If you mean business and you want a better salary, you want to live a good life, uncle and auntie, this thing can stop. We just got to get out there, get in front of the offices of our president and the opposition leader, You hear me? And this can
Wake them
stop.
up.
I have been calling, the opposition leader promised to come see me since Saturday. I waited all day Saturday. I called him all day Saturday. I called him Sunday. I called him Monday. I called him Tuesday. I called him back today. Right?
The man has
This is the kind of opposition you have. This is the kind of politicians you have. Okay? They don't want no discussion with Lall. They don't want no discussion with Lall because they have their own aims and objectives.
That's correct.
What they're looking out and who they're looking out for. You heard one of them said that this country, just a minute of people, and they were very specific. They said mostly the politicians. Lall said this umpteen times, but you have heard it. They said mostly the politicians will become filthy rich and the friends around them.
That's correct.
You hear that?
The few at the top. The
Yes.
few at the top.
Yes. I am told that Aubrey Norton, the opposition leader, met with ExxonMobil just a few days ago.
And
Just a few days ago.
He met with them when he was in New York a few months ago.
Wait, no man, this is what is going on, my friend. My brothers and sisters, this is what is going on in this country. And you people still sleeping, hoping and dreaming, believing that these politicians will free you from the bondage, will make your life and that of your future a good one.
Well, there's one more thing I have to say.
Go ahead.
But the only thing is that our people will have to stop thinking about black people vote for PNC and Kuli people vote for PPP.
No.
Once we break that barrier, the people will unite and get rid of both of them. That's what we need.
Thank you.
All right, good night, buddy.
Yes.
All right.
Josh?
Yes, sir.
Joshua?
Yes.
I want to tell this nation, if you don't have any other phone call, I want to go. I want to leave. I want to tell this nation, my brothers and sisters, we are in trouble. And we can get out of this trouble. We can be filthy rich. Hold 1 second. You're live on the air, sir. You're the last call. Go ahead.
Right, Mr. Glenn.
Go ahead.
Here we happen, buddy. And we got to concentrate on the president and the vice president. This country never no opposition leader. That man does not have leadership qualities. I will never vote for a man like that. That man does not looks like no leader.
Hold a second.
He's not a leader. He's a politician.
Just hold a second.
He has a big mouth.
Just
Talk a lot on the street when he's drinking. He just like Ramjatan. That man's a politician, not no leader. He's not really the guy who won't vote for that man.
No. We gotta careful with your language. I cut you off because you guys gotta careful with your language you're using. All right? The language you use can cause the station to close down.
Yeah.
All right? So you gotta choose your words. I understand where you're coming from. That the man is not a leader. The man has been elected the leader of the PNCR. So you can't change that. Me and you can't change that. What we can comment and say, his silence speaks volume of who he is as a leader with this oil contract. When he was afraid to use the word renegotiation. Well, now we don't even have to renegotiate the contract. An ample opportunity presents itself now today. You have heard it from the international people that the Liza 1 permit is expiring on the 31st of this month, next week, Tuesday. And we can put it on a hold and wring Exxon neck. We can squeeze out the B and get what we lost out in the last 5 years from them. What we got? We got nothing. We got $52 million out of the 600 and something million. Six something had to pay ExxonMobil tax. So Guyana only walk away with 52 million US. While they walk away, you heard the people say with 3.6 billion American dollars. Come on, man. This is what I want you guys to understand. The opportunity presents itself now. And between now and March 31st, May 31st, we have to demand that this nonsense stop. How are we going to do that? I am saying get out into the streets. Let us go and picket President Ali office and the opposition leader office. They are in command and they are in control. Okay? I see you calling me back now. You're going to be respectful this time. Go ahead.
But with this new reality here now, we got to know who are the real players.
Exactly.
We got to know now, between the three of them, who are the real players.
Hold on.
With this game here.
Hold on. Hold.
This is second innings.
We will know now if they really love the country and its people, or they love ExxonMobil and their shareholders.
Yeah.
All right? This is an opportunity for all Guyanese. Every single man, listen to me, man. You guys have an opportunity to see right now if they love the Guyanese people. If
they go on the road or not. If we should take the street or not.
With their decision. Exactly. If we take the street or not. So let's wait and see.
Let me watch and know.
Good. Thank you. Have a good night. With that, Joshua,
Yes, sir.
I just want to say I'm getting tired. I want to say good night and God bless you guys all. Let's wait and let's see what their next action will be. Have a great night.
We see you on Friday.